Welcome to Beyond Gaming, Publish Your RPG, the podcast in which we discuss all the process, all the methods, everything you need to know to bring your role-playing game to publication. I am Paco Garcia and my co-host is Chris Diaz. Together, we'll guide you through the world of how to write and how to publish your role-playing game, from first ideas to finished books and everything else that you may need. So please drop us your questions in social media. The links are in the show notes, or email me on podcast@gmsmagazine.com. Let's get started. So welcome back, Chris. Today, what?
Sorry,
Chris. Well, if I were speaking with my Spanish accent, you will be Chris.
I would be Chris.
You'd
be surprised the number of people who call me Chris.
Yeah, but Christ. No,
Chris.
no, Christ. It's different. You know, people think that I don't have an accent, and I do have an accent. I do have a.
Oh no, you have an accent, yeah.
Yeah, I know, but it's not the typical Spanish accent. My accent has been very smoothed out by many years living in the England.
I hung out with some friends, and there was one person. They were all English except one person who was Irish, and we were talking, and they said, "Oh yeah, you probably picked up her Irish accent." And I'm like, I make a comment thing like, "It's interesting she doesn't have an accent." I'm like, "What are you talking about? She's got a strong Irish accent." And I'm like, No, she doesn't. I don't pick up an Irish accent at all. She's like, "That's weird. How can you tell?" It's just like, is that weird? The perception that these very strong English speaking, we're talking, English speaking people with strong UK accents could not. They perceived a strong Irish accent from person from Ireland, and I, as a Canadian, did not perceive an Irish accent at all from this person. Even to this day, I'm just like, it's interesting how gold dress, blue dress accents could also be when people don't acknowledge it. Like, I don't acknowledge my mom's accent. Everyone's like, "Your mom's accent's so strong." And I'm like, huh,
okay,
I guess it is. I never noticed it.
Okay, talking about strong. Let's talk about strong writing. I don't know, that's a really bad segue, but we need to start.
We good write.
Yeah, with the topic of today. The first topic, human beings of Planeta Earth, that we're going to be covering today is OGL or original rules.
Now, this is something that I have a lot of thoughts on, and I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah, but remember that you only have 10 minutes.
I know. And I want to get it out right off the bat, where back in the day, you had no choice. You had to write original because of perceptions of copyright. I do want to state perceptions of copyright. Then, after nearly 25 years of role-playing games being published, we got the OGL, which allowed people to write for somebody else's system without having to worry about copyright. And now we have a world where there are a dozen different open gaming licenses. So the question now lies not, do you have to write for an original system, or should you run with an OGL? And that connects up to a previous topic where I believed that there is an incredible demand for writing for OGL, but there are certain expectations to go along with it.
Yes, and the thing about OGL also, and when we say OGL, are we talking specifically about D20 OGL, Wizards of the Coast Dungeons and Dragons OGL, or are we talking about any system that has been open to the public domain?
I am talking about any system that runs with an open gaming license. So Savage World, 13th Age, Fate, Pathfinder, D&D, all have OGLs where you can use their branding, you can use their rules, and you don't have to pay them any money.
Okay, good.
Which is a very, very large market.
Okay, because I one thing I think for people to understand is that OGL doesn't necessarily mean D20. You can go Fate.
Yeah.
You can go.
And I've written for all of them.
You can go with the system. You can go BRP. You can go Year Zero Engine. You can go Gumshoe. All of those systems have been open, so you can use them if you so wish. So the point is more about whether you want to use an existing set of rules that somebody else has written that you can tweak if you want to, or if you want to go completely original rules. And there are two ways to go about that.
Oh, it's on me. The one advantage for writing for OGL, there's a couple advantages, but I think the first advantage is that the system is proven.
Mhm.
It is established. It's rules tested. There's a fan base. Writing original rules may be fun. It is also hella time consuming, and it may appeal to specific people if it's crunch based like 5e, or it's role playing based like Fate. So when you are deciding, I'm going to create an original system, I go, remember, you are going to spend a lot of time trying to test your system to make sure it works well. If you write for an OGL, unless you're breaking the system and adding a lot of mechanical crunch, like I often do, if you're just writing an adventure, for example, write it for an established OGL, because then you don't have to worry about the tedium of testing your rule system, which if you're publishing a board game, it's one of those situations where that's why people play with other systems and play with other rules, because you're like, well, I know the system works because 1,000 people have already tested it.
Also, if you're writing an adventure, and I know this because I have published system neutral adventures, if you go with a system, then you already have an audience. And this is something that we spoke in the previous episode. So you are already catering to a need of somebody else. And that helps a great deal to make yourself, your game known. And also, it's just easier because you can follow some formulas. You know, if you want to write an adventure and you want to follow an OGL, the OGL is likely to tell you about how to create encounters, how to do scenes, how the adventures are structured and organized within that system to make them work. And also that can help you understand if your adventure works for the system or not. If you try to create an adventure, which is an investigation, you know, in a heist, using D20 is unlikely to actually work as well as if you use a different system better created for that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly right. You hit the nail on the head for that one. OGL is very dependent on if it fits your system. Critics will claim, because I've had it, that your setting may break the mechanical philosophy of the rule system. That being said, my personal opinion is that that is not a thing. Personally, I believe you can adapt any rule set to any system. It depends on, but understanding what your audience is looking for. For example, I was told that I could not adapt Amethyst to 4th edition D&D because D&D had a certain philosophy about it that was not compatible with a non-fantasy setting. I proved them wrong. I heard similar complaints, though not as many, that 5th edition was the same way. I put out Ultramodern 5 in 2016. There's now been a flood of non-fantasy stuff on the market of people that have been realizing that, yeah, it turns out rules are not biased. You can adapt it. That being said, there's certain philosophies that do play in. For example, if you're playing Fate or some system that's very loose on die rolls, you are going to create a system that attracts players looking for a more role-playing based mechanical system. If you want to create a game, like a book like I'm presenting now, where I've created, and I've counted this, 350 different firearms, you cannot create 350 distinct firearms using Savage World. There's just not enough rules to give you that individuality. You'll be having 300 entries and 75% of them are identical. So there is base of what you want. If you want to create a mechanically rich setting, then you have to pick a mechanically rich system of rules. If you want something where it is more role-playing based, like a murder mystery night or something similar where people are enveloping characters, it may not be in your best interest to have them constantly rolling dice if you want to keep the flow of the mechanics alive. So while I think you can adapt any system to any mechanics, it also depends on what you are wanting to project as a game designer.
Yes, and I think that is, I think that's an absolutely fantastic point, because there is one thing that you have to keep in mind, and is that, and I asked this without any kind of bad blood. Okay, so please, 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 listener, don't think badly about me for asking this question. But are you a good enough connoisseur of the rule system that you're going to use to be able to break it to fit your philosophy and make it work? Because I remember certain Cthulhu D20 RPG that didn't work at all. And it is because the rules were not adapted properly to the setting.
The more mechanically complex a system, the more work you may have to do to adapt it to a setting. And that's where the people said you couldn't adapt 5e or 4e to non-fantasy because it was so well adapted to a fantasy setting. So much so, talking about non-fantasy, it's been difficult for me to write non-fantasy rules, specifically firearm rules, because D&D, the official D&D, in a real brash sense of irresponsibility in game design, put out a bunch of untested, unproven one-page rules for non-fantasy rules.
Mm-hmm.
They go, here's what a gun will do. This is what a laser gun will do. This is some basic rules. And I insist on trying to be compatible with 5e, so I keep on working within that architecture. But it's an extremely lazy and it's not well thought out architecture that people used to quote me to say that that's the reason why it doesn't work. And people have said after the publication, like, you've done a good job, but you're proving the fact that why it doesn't work because of all the new rules and mechanics you've had to add in to make these work. I go, no, you just have to add in new rules. The other thing I want to add, going from the mechanical, this conversation about something that's mechanically rich. If you want 5 guys sitting around a table talking to each other, like you want to recreate the Matt Mercer experience,
Mm-hmm.
my recommendation is pick something that pulls as much dice rolling out of the equation as possible. If you want to recreate that improv comedy thing, then you want to pick a system that doesn't constantly have you look at a Excel spreadsheet full of all the numbers and graphs and have you constantly rolling dice. That's why VTTs are so popular for mechanically rich games. You don't need to use a VTT for Fate. You're barely rolling dice. You could just do that on Skype.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is OGL, an OGL system has an established fan base.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're writing for 5e, which I do, it has a huge fan base. Not only that, there's also a precedent for OGL coverage.
Right.
So people have asked me, and they've looked at my books, like Amethyst, and someone says, do you have this for Cypher? And I go to them, and so I know Cypher has an OGL license fee, a license system. So I could write for Cypher. And I said to the person to his face, you're the first person in 15 years in publishing that has ever asked for a Cypher-based Amethyst system. I published Amethyst for 5e, 4e, Pathfinder, 13th Age, Savage World, and Fate. I will never do that again, even considering the fact that the Savage World and Fate were written by somebody else. And I will tell you 100%, 5e outsells all the other ones combined. And the one I love the most, 13th Age, nobody buys. So, however, a lot of fans, if something says, well, this book, the core book for this system, is an adamantine seller on ttrpg. Yes, but it does not mean that you will see those level of sales. Fate, Savage World, Cypher, all these have OGLs, but be prepared to the fact that your audience may not transition from their sales to your sales.
No. And don't think either, and this is going to sound really bad, but it's the truth, don't think either that just because people have decided to buy Numerera or The Strange and play those games because of the Cypher system, that they are going to buy all the Cypher system games.
They bought Numenera for Numenera. They didn't buy it for the Cypher system. They bought it for Numenera. People bought Aliens for the Aliens IP. They didn't really care about the system that they use.
Okay.
And that's something very important. D&D is as much just a mechanical set of rules. I don't know a lot of people that go, no, I want to play because I'm in love with the Dungeons and Dragons setting. I rarely ever see people tell me how much they're in love with Forgotten Realms. And that's because for me, I have not played in a canonical D&D setting since the 80s. I have been running original IPs in my fantasy and non-fantasy settings ever since. And my fans and my players love that. So be prepared about that audience. If you write an original system, then you have your own challenges. You have to find your fan base.
And that is a fantastic segue for our next topic, which is going to be IP or original setting.
See what I did there?
And actually, this is a very, very interesting one, because I know that most people will want to, at the very least, improve on the settings that they have played. Unless they are very, very passionate about their settings. I, for example, would love, but it would be very difficult to do, would love for Dark Sun to come back again. I would love to be able to write for Dark Sun, but that's not going to happen.
I've told you, I'm sure I told you this because I'm sure we talk a lot about this. I was offered one IP in my entire history of back when I was in a closer relationship with Wizards of the Coast, specifically to one person at Wizards of the Coast. And we were having conversations which got me into the alpha test for 5th edition. They brought up the possibility of selling me an IP. Do you know what IP that was?
Don't tell me it was Dark Sun, because I would be very upset.
It was not Dark Sun, no.
No. Birthright?
No.
Oh, I'll quote you. I can keep saying, so just tell me.
Spelljammer.
Okay.
And I would have it's like, and I was just like, if you're serious, I will do everything in my power to get that IP. Because even though it was never an IP I ever played, I love the potential that I could play. Now, ironically, that it would eventually return in a third-party product, and it ended up becoming very controversial, as you and I have talked about previously.
Yes.
We won't go into that. That's an entirely different conversation, but we did talk about the incredible controversies regarding Spelljammer. But I will always champion original, but I admit I'm blessed because I have been doing this for 15 years. There is no doubt that an IP will generate more sales.
Yeah. And
if you have an IP, you will have a guaranteed fan base. Yeah,
and the thing is, I think the biggest advice that I would give people about this topic is write about what you are truly passionate about. So if you're really passionate about an IP, to be honest, even if it's not truly commercially alive, I know people who still write for Dark Sun. I know people who still publish for Dark Sun.
I created Neurospasta, my cyberpunk game, because I wanted to write Ghost in the Shell, and I knew how much of a difficult time it would be. So I created this 15 years ago. And then once again, we brought up in the previous episode that somebody's trying to create a Ghost in the Shell game, but it has not been published. But I admit, if I had created a Ghost in the Shell, an official Ghost in the Shell RPG in lieu of Neurospasta back in 2014, it would still be, it would sell. It would still sell. I would probably run a Kickstarter for a reboot, and it would probably do very well. The problem with IP
Mhm.
that you have to answer to a holder.
Yeah.
It costs money.
Wait a second. And even more crucially, you have to answer to an audience who will know about the theme more than you. But let's talk first about the stakeholder.
Yeah, it costs money, more money than you think.
Mhm.
Lawyers will be involved,
Yeah.
not creatives.
No.
They may insist on an original ISO. We're talking about OGL or original. They may insist on an original rule set because they don't want to be associated with another IP.
Mhm.
They may say, you can have our system, but we don't want it for 5e D&D. We don't want our necessarily we don't want our IP to generate sales for another IP. We don't want to make it the Savage World. It must be an original system or an internal system that you've created for your line of products, like Free League, for example.
Mhm.
You might also, they may have rules against Kickstarter because you have to buy the rights to this product generally before you can put it on Kickstarter.
Mhm.
And if your Kickstarter fails, you are still on the hook for that. They may not want, and that's why not a lot of IPs go on Kickstarter. Free League publishes their products without looking at IP. It's not always the case. There are tons of IPs that do go on Kickstarter. A lot of board games pop up on Kickstarter, but those are generally by companies that have so much money.
Yeah, well, I mean, Free League can afford to go on Kickstarter because they have the money. I mean, Alien, they went to Kickstarter. The Walking Dead, they've gone to Kickstarter. They have no issue to, and they do very well going to Kickstarter because they make fantastic campaigns. But then them and Osprey are kind of my baby companies, so they are the people I most root for. So they can.
But like I said, I offered my talents to the Ghost in the Shell guy, and he wanted to bring me on board. But 2 years later, he has not published yet. So I do know how complex. So for me, if I had gotten an IP like Ghost in the Shell, that would be my end all. I would put everything on the back burner and go hardcore to publish that. Now, with an original IP, yes, you answer to no one. I designed Neurospasta because if I wanted to tweak the setting, I could. You can break canon. You brought it up before about having to answer to fans. If you create an original IP, you answer to no one but yourself. You can break canon because it's your canon. You can also, and this is something that's going to be controversial. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that this is going to be controversial. You can move your original IP as close as you can to an established IP and still be protected as being a derivative work. A lot of people don't realize how derivative and how close to an original IP you can if you want to create something. I know what the influences of Amethyst are. Most people accuse it of being influenced by something else. I say, no, you're incorrect. It's influenced by this. Neurospasta is very much a Ghost in the Shell. Apex was very much based on the movie Push. It's okay to acknowledge these things. People will see you're ripping them off, but most people find things like, I like you're tapping this feel, but you're going off in a different direction. Don't do a carbon copy, have your own voice, but it's okay if you want to claim inspiration and take inspiration from established IP. You'd be shocked how close you can get, and fans can be incredibly forgiving as long as you admit your inspiration. I've seen people and designers saying this is not associated whatsoever with this IP, and I'm like, dude, seriously, just acknowledge it's inspired. They're not going to sue you.
And the thing is, I think it's way more offensive if you try to hide the fact. There was a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I don't know exactly when it was, but there was somebody who tried to create Dark Sun, and they took the whole product to Kickstarter, and they tried to disguise it as if it was something different, that it was nothing to do with Dark Sun, but it was a world that had been rubbished by magic, where magic was pernicious unless you use it in a way that actually is very careful and mindful, and it doesn't produce that much harm. And you can have mental powers that would allow you to do things. And there are city-states that are peppered through the whole landscape. And there is a type of insectoid that looks very much like a praying mantis. But no, it's got nothing to do with Dark Sun. And people just went on a look. You're trying to bullshit us. F off. We are not interested in this because you are lying to us. If you had said, since Wizards of the Coast will not publish Dark Sun, we are going to recreate it with different names and we're going to do something very close in the same ethos, same spirit. And people have said,
well, Numenera was basically a direct inspiration from Planescape. And people have said Numenera is basically the follow-up to Planescape, but they just can't use that IP. IP is very much reserved for big companies. I mean, we've tried. I've actually reached out to Electronic Arts about Mass Effect, Dead Space, and Titanfall. Mass Effect is under Modifius, although they're still not really working on a role-playing game. I would love to say, look, I know this setting very well. I would love to do a Mass Effect RPG for you guys. But that they won't. But Electronic Arts has probably said no, and then Modifius has their own thing a couple of years later. So a lot of times, IP for big companies won't talk to you. Modifius, Free League, they don't have those issues. If, however, you want to grab an obscure IP, that might be, I love obscure IPs. If someone were to put out a role-playing game based around a movie that very few people saw, there's a great movie called Prospect. If you came out with a Prospect RPG, I go, that cannot be as difficult as a Dead Space IP. There's a fantastic movie that nobody has seen called Vesper. It is a post-apocalyptic biopunk movie. And I literally reached out to the director who didn't answer me, but I was like, hey, if you're ever interested in trying to adapt this to a role-playing game, I'm your man. I would love to work with you. But that was a no, but that's fine. If you have a passion for a specific IP and it's not well known, if you liked it, somebody else will.
Yes, and also I think what you were talking about earlier, don't hesitate to change names. Don't hesitate to change, a few situations and create something. Again, I think it is very important. And this is something I said in the previous episode. Don't let difficulties stop you from writing and publishing what you want to write and publish. Find the loophole, find the way around it, and make sure that you can do it. I know loads of people who were, raised in the 80s and would love to have role-playing games based on movies from the 80s. I would love to have a horror RPG based on the movies from Dario Argento from Demon, which is one of my most favorite horror movies ever in the world.
That being said, and this is my final point on this thing, you also have to make an IP which has the potential for long play gaming. Like, I don't want to buy an RPG that I'm going to play once because there's only one type of game you can play. That's okay. No, let me finish. There's a part of me that, like, if I'm going to spend $30-$40 on a game, it's got rules and characters and all that, I don't necessarily want to play one specific thing. And that was where I couldn't understand, and I hate to harp on them, why Everyday Heroes chose their IP. Like, they came out with a Crow adventure, a Highlander adventure, and a Rambo adventure. And I was looking at them going, at least these are solitaire games. How in the world are you going to create them? Because one of the defining elements of those franchises is they have singular main characters. So I'm like, how are you adapting the Crow to a 5-player group setting? So I would also question the fact that if your IP is, I want to make a game, but there's only one specific type of adventure that you can play, and only one, you also have to ask yourself, are you going to have enough of a fan base to attract for that one type of game?
Well, I think there are ways around it, and maybe this is something that we should discuss in different episodes, because I don't know, for something like Rambo, it's as easy in brackets as say, okay, Rambo is going to be the kind of icon. So you are not going to be Rambo, you're going to be somebody in his squad. If you play if you wrote a Predator RPG, there's pretty much only one type of adventure that you can play. And you're not going to be the Predator. You're not going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger because he's the only one who survived until the second film. You're going to be somebody from their squad, and you're going to try and find out who the hell is killing people, whatever. But that's pretty much all you can do.
Predator's got tons of different stories, as we've seen with the recent movies. But I look at the Crow and go, well, are there like 5 people who are Crows? unless you're the bad guy trying to kill the guy, I couldn't understand. Like I said, as someone who has these public games are published, so I'm sure someone out there who's read them and go, well, this is how they made the adventure. And I go, okay, that's fine. I would just question the fact that if someone were to say, hey, here's a list of IPs, which one are you interested? The Crow, Highlander, or Rambo. I mean, they also had like Escape from New York. That I would totally get. If you did Big Trouble Little China, the role-playing game, I would totally dive in on that, talking about 80s movies. The Thing, these are things where I think there is the potential. But I look at Rambo and like, well, if you're not Rambo, then it's simply a period 80s action story without Rambo. Rambo is...
But the thing, they can be pretty good fun. But also, one thing that I would disagree with you is that why not write a one-off game? I've got plenty of games out there that you will only play once. There's a whole system of games called VHS, Very Horror System, from an Italian company called Ace Games, and they have created these VHS tape size games where you play just one adventure, and it's a group of people running away from, murderers like Mike Myers. You know, and why not write that game? I think if you have a movie, I don't know, a movie that nobody remember, like Ghoulies. You don't remember that?
Yeah. Ghoulies? I remember Ghoulies.
Okay, so think about...
I said Goonies.
No, Ghoulies. Think about...
Oh, I know Ghoulies.
That movie, it would be brilliant for a one-off.
And speaking of, like, the Crow, Highlander, and Rambo, these are one-off adventures. But that's just something when you're creating, like when I ran a Ghost in the Shell campaign, it lasted about 10 months. The players weren't playing the main characters from that series. They were playing a completely original group of people working for Section 9, a secondary group of people. They were interacting with their main characters, but there was definitely enough content to create an original campaign.
So with that, I think we have kind of finished the topics that we had for this episode, and we can well,
no, a quick little side though.
Okay.
Is there an IP that you wish someone would make a game for?
Oh God, that is a very, very good question. Yes, actually. When I was a child, there was a German series called Into the Labyrinth. That series I watched avidly, and it was about this team of 4 kids that would be sent into a labyrinth by a witch and a warlock who were constantly fighting for a substance called the nidus. And if the witch got the nidus or nidus, I don't know how you would pronounce it, if the witch managed to get the nidus, then she would be able to gain control over time traveling and rewrite history. And what will happen is that every time the children jump into the labyrinth, which was some sort of cave, when they get out, they would be in a different type of history where the nidus would be, and this warlock, who wasn't able to stay anywhere in time, would give them sort of like the Dungeon Master in the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon series, would give them some pointers as to where to find the nidus, and they will have to run adventures and find it and make sure that they go to the nidus before the witch. So at the end of the episode, they were very close to getting the nidus, and this witch would come out and say, "I deny you the nidus," and the nidus would go into a different time and space, and they will have to go and continue the story. I think I would absolutely love to see that, you know, a bunch of children time traveling and trying to stop a witch from getting the item that would give her ultimate power.
Well, there you go.
And that is it for this episode. Thank you very much indeed for being there and listening to us. And please, seriously send us your questions, your comments, anything you will want us to discuss at podcast@gmsmagazine.com, and we will be delighted to take a look. But Until the next time, this is a GMS Magazine production. I am Paco Garcia with Chris Diaz, and we will talk to you very, very soon. Take care.